The cruise ship Achille Lauro made international headlines when it was hijacked by terrorists in 1985. But on this day, 9 years later, joyous passengers have all but forgotten the ship's troubled past as they embark for a cruise through the Mediterranean and down the east coast of Africa. Still, when the crew welcomes passengers Peter and Hilly Siekman on board, Hilly has an eerie feeling.
Ships have almost like a soul, have a personality, and I knew that ship was jinxed.
Little does Hilly know that the Achille Lauro's darkest days are yet to come. 5 days into the cruise, the festivities on deck are in full swing. The passengers are being entertained by singer Moss Hills.
It's a great atmosphere. The ship's horn going and got entertainment out on the decks. It's a big highlight of the cruise.
But while the passengers are dancing, Eleanor Stevens notices that the ship seems to be leaning to one side. She and her husband Ted alert the captain.
My husband knocked him on the shoulder and suggested that the ship was listing, and he avoided the question and told us how a ship was built. But my husband wasn't satisfied, and he tapped him again and said, "Sir, this ship is listing." And then he said, little bitty.
The revelry continues into the evening. Moss Hills is performing in the ship's lounge when some passengers tell him they see smoke outside on the pool deck.
And I said, probably just the wind blowing the funnel smoke down. And they said, no, it looks like smoke from a fire.
The passengers are right. The Achille Lauro is on fire 130 miles off the coast of Africa. Eleanor Stevens is awakened in her cabin.
And with that, we could hear down the end of the gangway people rushing up, knocking on all the cabin doors and shouting, "Fire!"
Eleanor and Ted Stevens are herded out onto the darkened deck. Ted believes the ship is in serious trouble and wonders why no one is readying the lifeboats.
That was the most horrific experience I've ever had in my life. It was a terrifying situation.
Eleanor and Ted put on life vests. By daylight, they could see the fire is growing.
And you could smell the arid smell of the fire burning. You could see the smoke coming out from behind the funnel, pouring out, and the smell was horrible, and it never got better.
Crew members fight the fire for 5 more hours, but despite their efforts, the smoke grows more intense.
And suddenly the fire in one section just leapt back into life out of nowhere. And it was very ferocious burning.
Smoke spews out onto the pool deck as the fire burns through the ship's midsection. Some passengers now join the crew in forming a bucket brigade. They haul water up over the ship's side, while crew members toss it into a burning cabin. But it's not doing any good. The ship is now listing so badly, passengers have to hold onto the handrails. Entertainer J.J. Butler fears the ship is sinking.
When you're in such a list, you think it's going to nosedive any moment now.
Everyone must breathe through wet towels to keep the smoke out of their lungs. At last, they begin to be ushered to the lifeboats. But once in a boat, Hilly Siekman and her husband Peter are alarmed by its condition.
The ropes were frayed and broken, they were stuck, they couldn't get the boat down because they had never been exercised, never drilled, never greased, never nothing. And we fell into the water. And we were just so lucky that we didn't overturn. Very lucky.
Like the Siekmans, Ted and Eleanor Stevens get into a crowded lifeboat.
We were very fearful for our lives in the lifeboat. I mean, we were on the equator. I mean, that area of the Indian Ocean is probably alive with sharks.
But Eleanor and her husband are lucky to have gotten into a boat at all. The remaining passengers are put onto small, bobbing life rafts. And the only way to get into them is to climb over the railing and then down an unstable rope ladder. This is a daunting task for anyone, especially the elderly passengers. After helping others down, Moss Hills makes it safely into a raft. He watches in disbelief as the smoke pours out of the giant ship.
As we drifted away, you could see this ship, I've worked on it for years. It's quite a sobering thought, especially when you think that I could see clearly the rope deck area where we had been. And we could have died on that ship.
After 4 hours adrift, some of the people in the rafts are rescued by a freighter. 800 other survivors are picked up by the Hawaiian King, a Panamanian oil tanker. Tragically, 4 passengers lost their lives during this crisis. The rest were left to ask, what went wrong? Officers on the ship reported that an electrical fire started in the engine room, and the ship's sprinkler systems couldn't put out this type of fire. The sprinkler water only flooded the ship, causing it to list heavily to the left. Fortunately, advances have been made since the Achille Lauro's sinking. Today, on modern ships like the Grand Princess, high-tech computer sensing systems can immediately alert ship officials to any problem.
Cabin.
State-of-the-art metal fire doors close to keep a fire from spreading. And in the engine room, a sophisticated carbon dioxide or CO2 system can smother an electrical fire as soon as it starts. For the survivors of this tragedy, the memory still haunts them.
It was just a very bad dream which doesn't go away.
I had terrible nightmares after I came back, and relived the ordeal for quite a long time.
The flames still flicker in the minds of those who were there. Sailors still talk of the ship's fiery demise. The burned-out hull of the Achille Lauro was never recovered. It lies at rest in a dark, watery grave.